Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked.
Tonight's Oscars, unfortunately, isn't the groundbreaking Best Picture winner Coda. More on that in a minute. But it's what happens now after Will Smith slapped
the
Chris
biggest
Rock
night
live
in Hollywood.
Now to the Oscars here at home, and the slap that is still reverberating through the internet and beyond. The Academy moving ahead with disciplinary proceedings against Will Smith for hitting Chris Rock at Sunday's ceremony.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to participate for the 8th time at this important meeting. History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever. In conclusion, and despite all the challenges, we have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation, and which we can only fulfill through collaboration on a national and on a global level. I wish you an impactful and successful meeting.
And the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order? That is the purpose of this discussion today, so let's get on with it. Your Excellency, are you ready for a new world order?
And beyond. The Academy moving ahead with disciplinary proceedings against Will Smith.
I don't know how to communicate it any better that we are all being distracted. We are living in a matrix that controls our thoughts and our conversations. They have us all talking about the same things that don't matter, keeping us oblivious to the things that actually do matter. In regards to world affairs, everyone has these baseless opinions, making points about irrelevance, while the people in the know actually are talking about and discussing things that actually do matter, discussing where this world is heading and what their expectations are for it and how do we get there. They're preparing their own selves and their families and their companies, while the rest of the masses live in ignorance, discussing Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, or who won the NCAA basketball tournament, or who can actually beat Bobby Flay. We are all being distracted, and for the most part, people are not ready for what is coming to this world. The burden of that is sometimes very hard for me to deal with. It's not like this is just some conspiracy theory that I'm making up on my own views and just speculating. I mean, you literally hear these people talking about what's coming to the world and how the world is about to change. And then you share these things with your family and your friends, and you literally get silence from them. No one responds. Or the ones that do respond say, this is not a big deal because it's not happening for 10 to 15 years. Then you have people planning on making these major moves to chase pre-COVID lifestyles, while the world is preparing to be uprooted and shaken to the core. They don't want to plan around that reality. In fact, they'd rather not even know about it so they can move through their emotions or their feelings or how they would like to think about it. You know what? I mean, at this point right now, I'm just really venting. But, it's true. We are all being distracted. I started this video showing exactly this to the T. The Oscars was held on the night of March 27th. This is when Will Smith did his stage smack of Chris Rock. And the next day, this is all over the news. Everyone is talking about it. But halfway across the world in Dubai, almost 30,000 people from all around the world have gotten together to discuss the future of the world at the World Government Summit. And there is not even a peep from the media about this. You see, they can talk about Will Smith for a week and how unstable Putin is. But as the leaders from all industries talk about the change that will affect the world, they leave the masses completely unaware of it. Now understand, you don't have to follow what the World Government Summit is saying to be prepared. This is not what I'm communicating. It's not about that summit. It's never about knowing everything that is going on in this world. I mean, you can't. It's more about not letting irrelevant actions from known sellouts grab your attention and then present a need for thought or discussion on it, more than really discussing that it was in fact a distraction. I mean, if you even have to really convince folks that it was staged, then there's more that needs to be discussed with that person more than that distraction. Listen, we are heading to a new world order. And before we get there, they will be crashing the world system. Their narrative is already set up for it. So we are just watching the implementation of it all. We need to be ready. This week, I want to be brief and explain what is going on in hopes that everyone watching makes sure that they are getting their houses in order. We cannot afford to be distracted. We must not be asleep. We must stay ready and make sure that we're awake. Let's begin. Okay, so let me get started here because this is how I started the video. Let's talk about the World Government Summit. What is it exactly? Well, on their website, they explain it as such. The World Government Summit organization is a global, neutral, non-profit organization dedicated to shaping the future of governments. The summit, in its various activities, explores the agenda of the next generation of governments, focusing on harnessing innovation and technology to solve universal challenges facing humanity. Since its inception in 2013, the summit has championed the mission of shaping future governments and creating a better future for humanity. The past 7 editions of the summit have successfully established a new model to collaborate on an international playing field to inspire and enable the next generation of governments. So yeah, this was an event that leaders around the world are using to have discussions about shaping the world. And the name of the summit isn't even ambiguous. It's the World Government Summit, discussing bringing about a world government. They don't have to hide it anymore. At the summit, there are so many different topics being discussed in different seminars. For instance, they spoke about the New World Order, and are we ready for it?
And the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order?
There was a lot of discussion about the future of money and cryptocurrencies.
And I think we're at the cusp of embarking on exploring a new technology that is a new technology for money. The new technology for money will power the new financial sectors, which will be the fundamental pillars for every other sector, be it real estate, e-commerce, everything else.
Stable coins and CBDCs, central bank digital currencies included. A lot of talk about the regulation of crypto, which is so funny because in my earlier videos about Bitcoin and the mark of the beast, there were so many naysayers about my conclusion of Bitcoin being tied to the mark of the beast. Because people truly believe that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are decentralized, so that the power is really with the people and not the governments. They think that this cryptocurrencies is power to the people. It's crazy. But those naysayers should really listen to what these people were saying. They spoke about the future of aviation. They also spoke about putting the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in action. They spoke about the changes the war in Ukraine has and will bring to the world. And they spoke an awful lot about the metaverse and Web3. They discussed the future of the world. And while they were discussing our futures, our news media doesn't bring it up at all. That should tell you very clearly that the news is not about informing us, but about distracting us. Now, obviously, they didn't need to broadcast the whole event, but there could have been mentions, there could be summaries, there could be some kind of coverage. I mean, it's the news. But there was nothing, and they filled our time up with content about Will Smith and their narrative of Putin's blunder in Ukraine. But there was nothing about this discussion about our future, and where we can actually go to listen to it and understand what is being discussed about it. And people, maybe in their justification for the news media, maybe want to believe that, hey, being that this summit was in Dubai, the major news outlets were unaware of this event. But look at their partners. Their strategic partners are all the organizations that are building the New World Order. I mean, that's clear. But they show their media partners as well. And we have all the major Western news outlets as a part of it. Bloomberg, CNN, CNBC, Sky News, Euronews, etc. They don't just know about it, they are media partners. In fact, this woman, Becky Anderson, that moderated this panel asking this question,
are we ready for a new world order?
She actually works for CNN. So it is clear that it is not that they don't know about this. They just think that what happened with Will Smith is more important for us to know more than what they are discussing about our future. Okay, so listen to this question that woman, Becky Anderson, posed in her seminar.
Is the US-led multilateral system created post-World War II to manage international relations so that the world would never again see and experience the same chaos and disorder of a world war? Is it anything like fit for purpose? And if not, what is the alternative?
Clear. This is the constant topic I have spoken about in countless videos. Questions I pose to many people that wave me off as a conspiracy theorist. But here, they are having a conversation about it at the World Government Summit.
Your Excellency, are you ready for a new world order?
There were many things said in this conversation, but I think this was the most emphasized point I heard.
And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency.
Yeah, she said, we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. If you've been following this channel for a while and have seen my videos warning about this, you understand how big this statement is. But the masses are distracted and are not ready for this change. Do you feel that people that you know are ready for a dramatic change in our system of money? Absolutely not. Now you ask, how did that seminar end?
Incredibly invaluable as we sit at what is a very transformative time. Are we ready? I don't know. Are we at an inflection point? I think we all agree that we are.
So that was the summary of that segment. Are we ready for a new world order? They don't know, but they all agree that we are at an inflection point for it. An inflection point is a time of significant change in a situation. It's a turning point. They all agree that we are at the turning point for a new world order. And this theme of a new world order was constantly communicated during this summit. In the middle of their transitions for their different segments, they constantly played this commercial.
There's no longer any doubt that humans are heating up the oceans, land, and sea by burning fossil fuels.
The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions.
سرعة التغيير القادمة أكبر بكثير مما نتوقع.
I see a future where the internet is available for free for everyone, and that means the location of power is going to shift. Decentralization of power structures everywhere may be the beginning of that shift in finance, in political power.
We have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation.
What was once a conspiracy, people are now making commercials about it. So I think it's clear that the masses, the everyday people of the world, clearly are distracted from what is actually happening in our world and what is being planned. There is a reality that the whole world is distracted from. So beyond what was said at this event, let me also show what is happening in our world. If you've been following this channel, you know I have always been an advocate for stocking up and preparing if you are led and are able. As I watch the news today, it's very surreal because I am hearing the news media now put a narrative on the issues I have been warning about. They're giving their spin to the things that I've been warning about.
This morning, the U.S. and the world bracing for food shortages as the war in Ukraine rages on. President Biden, speaking to NATO leaders in Brussels Thursday, said because of sanctions on Russia, food shortages are coming.
The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia, it's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
The U.S., Canada, and Europe are major wheat producers, but Ukraine and Russia produce about 1/3 of the world's supply. And less food means higher prices on top of already high inflation rates. Groceries are already about 8% more expensive than they were last year. And those expenses are not just hurting consumers, but also food banks like this.
The world is heading to crisis mode so that they can introduce their radical changes. He said what they do know is that the global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected. He said the world has to deal with the dangerous clash between major world powers.
The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions of a dangerous clash between major global powers.
Ukraine is not a major world power, so he must know something we don't. These people are all preparing for the change, discussing these important matters, while the news media shows us rare footage of Prince as a child.
Have you ever seen Prince as a child? He's like a mythical creature. I mean, very few images exist. That is until a stroke of luck led our Minneapolis station WCCO to unearth an incredible gem.
Immediately stood out.
Are most of the kids in favor of the picketing?
Yep.
How come?
I mean, that's ridiculous. You see what I'm saying? Do not be distracted. There are problems coming with our complete system, and it will affect you. The United States and Europe have ratcheted up sanctions against Russia. I mean, they're really even getting personal, going after Putin's daughters.
Responsible nations have to come together to hold these perpetrators accountable. And together with our allies and our partners, we're going to keep raising the economic cost and ratchet up the pain for Putin and further increase Russia's economic isolation.
There are threats to China if they assist Russia with getting around the sanctions as well. The U.S. is provoking an economic collapse in Russia by having the Treasury block Russian bond payments, trying to raise the risk of a Russian default of debt.
U.S. is building the financial pressure on Russia. Now, after imposing financial sanctions against or following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, U.S. is acting to eat into Russia's holdings of U.S. dollars. In the latest, the United States has stopped the Russian government from paying holders of its sovereign debt more than $600 million US dollars from reserves held at American banks. U.S. has already frozen the foreign currency reserves held by the Russian central bank at U.S. financial institutions in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February the 24th.
Again, this is all about fiat currencies, but this is also war moves as well. Pushing a country to economic collapse are just movements of a financial war. This is how wars escalate. But even more important than that, We are at a time where the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world are signaling the slowdown and retreat from their easy money principles since 2008. They are raising interest rates and tightening their monetary policy. So just by this action alone, we should all be bracing for a hard economic impact. But because the news is not pushing us to move, and many people don't really understand how important the Fed interest rates are and what an actual tightening means, people are just very still asleep. You see, the news could handle it though and prepare people. When COVID hit, the news was able to make everyone so scared enough to put the mask on. But right now, they're not getting people properly ready for problems that are easy to see coming. Listen, one of the biggest indicators of a recession that we have here in the United States is blinking, flashing red. The yield curve of the United States debt has inverted. This means that the yields on short-term interest rates are higher than the yields on long-term interest rates. Short-term interest rates are higher than long-term interest rates. Understand, normally a lender receives a better yield when they loan out money for a longer period of time. So traditionally, you would get a higher return if you loan out money for 30 years rather than for 10 years. But now the yield curve is inverted. And when the yield curve inverts, it's because people are selling short-term debt because their short-term view is that problems are on the horizon. The inverted yield curve has been an accurate predictor of recessions for almost 50 years or so. But yet again, the public does not seem like they're ready for a recession. Mortgage demand is down more than 40% from a year ago. The 30-year mortgage rate hit over 5%, a rate we haven't seen since 2013, while home prices are up 20%. So the mortgages on inflated priced homes are higher than ever. These are massive economic signals of a major economic slowdown that is on the horizon. But again, the public is not ready for this. And I believe that the reason that most people are able to be asleep is because they believe truly that at some point the government is going to step in and fix their problems. They're putting their lives in the hands of the government. And I make these warning videos to make sure that you understand you cannot do this. You cannot do this because there is way more to this story than what most people are understanding. You see, when looking at this, most people may want to look at it all from a secular point of view, which helps them believe it will all get worked out. But it's important to understand that this is not just a secular issue, but it's also biblical as well. The Bible prophesies of these events, which is why people need to read and study their Bibles. The fact that the Bible has prophesied of major inflation and food shortages should be very telling of the times that we're all in. This is all prophesied in the opening of the 7 seals. This is when we see what is referred to as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's read it in Revelation chapter 6. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. And when he opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. When he opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." And when he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given to them over a 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, and death, and by the beast of the earth. That's Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 through 7. Now I speak on this in greater detail in the Revelation series part 2, but I'm going to speak specifically on the 3rd and 4th seal. The 3rd seal the black horse? When the living creature says, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine? This is inflation, hyperinflation actually, and is very telling of this time because wheat is the most specific point that they are speaking about in reference to food shortages.
The U.S., Canada, and Europe are major wheat producers, but Ukraine and Russia produce about 1/3 of the world's supply. And less food means higher prices on top of already high inflation rates. Groceries are already about 8% more expensive than they were last year.
Many people don't recognize this prophecy is speaking of hyperinflation because they don't understand the currencies of Rome during those times. So let's understand. A denarius during those times was worth 1 day of wages. So let's say making $10 an hour, a day's worth of wages may be $80. So imagine a quart of wheat for a denarius is saying like $80 for a loaf of bread. John was referring to hyperinflation. And the 4th horse, which is the pale horse, kills 1/4 of the earth with the sword and with hunger. 1/4 of the world population will be killed. Today in 2022, the world population sits at 7.7 billion. So we're talking about a little less than 2 billion people killed on the earth. This is from famine and war. This is prophecy of the book of Revelation, and it cannot be ignored, especially when you have events and narratives that look like we're leading right to it. We are dealing with a world in conflict that is escalating. We have other nations like North Korea giving red lines about using nuclear weapons. We have major world powers escalating rhetoric and actions against each other, with a major U.S. general saying that potential for international conflict is increasing, not decreasing.
We are now facing 2 global powers, China and Russia, each with significant military capabilities, both who intend to fundamentally change the rules-based current global order. We are entering a world that is becoming more unstable, and the potential for significant international conflict between great powers is increasing, not decreasing.
It also has to confront the repercussions of a dangerous clash between major global powers.
Ukraine is asking NATO for more weapons, weapons, and weapons.
My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons, and weapons.
And NATO members like Poland are thinking about involving themselves in the war, which would just escalate everything. War is coming, but most people ignore what's going on because they don't see how this actually will affect them. But war is escalating, and we cannot ignore it. If you tie in what they're saying at the World Government Summit, what Klaus Schwab alluded to without giving you details, you can understand what is happening in this world, and it is up to each of us to be ready and not asleep. We should be expecting a major cyber attack or attack on our energy systems. Don't expect things to just happen in a predictable manner. As events happen, it happens in the form of a story. So it all depends on how they decide to tell it. But the world is headed to a controlled takedown, and we are just watching how the narrative forms and how it comes. But we should be living in truth and not asleep. But the unfortunate thing is, most people are asleep. I know people close to me who are asking for time frames. They want to make these major decisions because they think that they have time before things get bad. But this is not something that we can time. All we can do is rest and trust in Father and move to His will and put our faith and trust in Him and move according to His will and be led by His Spirit. Because we cannot control what's happening here. All we can do is rest in Father who will protect and guard us. There is a time coming that will consist of death, conflict, and hunger. We are being warned of these things, these events, and we are seeing it with our own eyes. People feeling a little better now that gas stopped at an average of $4 for regular. But it's going higher. It just took a short break in its climb. And it still will keep going as inflation continues to move higher. But because gas has slowed in its climb, people are just adjusting themselves to it and continue to be oblivious to what is happening around them. But understand, we know things are changing for sure because the Fed has said so, and they control our money. With the Fed saying they are going to be more aggressive to combat inflation, this means that they are going to slow down an already slowing economy. And if you ever look back at the stories of when the Fed has tried to curb inflation, you can understand exactly what is to come.
In the 1970s, monetary policy was too loose. The money supply was growing faster than the economy, and that led to inflation. People started to expect inflation, and they built this expectation into their economic decisions. That led to even more inflation. High inflation, plus other shocks to the economy, like a quadrupling of oil prices, led to a bad recession with periods of high unemployment.
This may be the worst weekend they've ever faced for finding gasoline to give them the automobile freedom they take as their due. Gasoline shortages are spreading across the country. Odd even service, gasoline lines, and closed gas stations are becoming increasingly common.
Neil, isn't this disgusting? Why doesn't anybody contact the president? Why is he letting this happen to us?
To sum up in the word of one irate motorist, the first day of the odd-even system was a disaster. Gas lines at many stations were a lot longer than normal.
Line today is longer than it's ever been. I have no explanation for it.
This gas line at one station on the Upper West Side ran from 96th Street and West End Avenue all the way up to 102nd Street. As might be expected, the longer the line and waiting time, the angrier some motorists became.
I think it's terrible. I really think it's terrible. I'm in here for an hour already.
There's no shortage. I don't believe there's a shortage.
Change is on the horizon, and people should be prepared for it. There's a great deal of people that are just not ready for what is coming, but you cannot be one of them that's on that list. We are headed to the Great Tribulation, and Father requires us to be awake and walking aligned with Him, trusting in Him. His messages hit really hard right now when you see how He has told us to be. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. For Elohim did not appoint us to wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Master, Yahusha the Messiah, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with Him. Therefore, comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. You see, the majority of the world, everyone else that are not believers, they're asleep, talking about irrelevant topics. Will Smith, NBA rankings, food show tournaments, social media posts, etc. They are all asleep and will be overtaken, and they cannot escape. But we are not in darkness, so none of this will take us unexpectedly. If you're watching this, it's because He is calling you to be in His presence and stand firmly in His ways. We are His people, His assembly, a peculiar people, and we are called to not live in ignorance, but to walk in His power. I made this video to show clearly that while the world is making plans and preparing for this new world order,
are we ready for a new world order?
The media and those who we expect to inform us are not doing so. We are getting general reports, but it's not about keeping us prepared. Do you remember when COVID came on the scene? They had all these reports about what to do in order to protect ourselves. Right now, we're on the cusp of major change. They said at the meeting they were at the brink of a dramatic change, that we are at an inflection point for a new world order. They are telling us that we are going to have food shortages. Biden telling us all that we're going to all have to make major sacrifices for this war in Ukraine. But has he given one plan for us to prepare for it? The point is, you must be vigilant. We cannot just sit around and wait for others to protect us. Yah protects us, so we must sit and rest and trust in Him. Remember what Yahusha told us in Matthew chapter 24. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your master is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household, to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and at an hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's Matthew chapter 24, verses 42 through 51. You see, this is crunch time. This is the time where we must really walk in our faith and match our walk with our words. We can't just say we love him with our mouths, but keep our heart from him. Our actions should display our faith in him, our love of him, our trust in him. This is not a time for fear, but a time of strength. If we are his, we need to act like we are. We are at the doorstep of 1,000-year-old prophecies being fulfilled, and you are one to be a witness of it. Awake to it. You are blessed and called out to walk according to his ways through his strength. We know what is coming. It's quite clear. And it's also quite clear that the enemy doesn't want the masses to know. Father is calling you to be his and walk in truth and make way for his kingdom. Do not let the enemy distract you and keep you in ignorance. Be called out and set apart. Be a believer. This world is moving towards great tribulation. And though we don't know the timeline, we clearly see it approaching. Now is the time to walk narrowly in his path and rest in his presence. He wants you to know he has you if you trust in him. Now that doesn't mean that tribulation and hard times will not come upon you. No, it just means that whatever comes, he will take care of you, and you will be rewarded if you overcome and persevere. So overcome and persevere. Do not follow this world, but be one that those in this world should follow. The kingdom of heaven is truly at hand, and it is up to you to be ready for it. So, be ready and keep your eyes fixed on our Savior. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise God. Okay. Thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share this video with others. If you have not done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Elohim willing, I upload every Friday. Please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. As always, I really would like to thank all those who support this ministry. You know who you are. Your contributions have been an extreme blessing to this ministry, and I'm very thankful for you. Thank you for being a blessing and your continued support to this mission. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. I love you all.